begonias along there, angel leaf begonias, and Grandma always had them too in her room. And they were there, but I had to sit, and because being left-handed, it was easy for me to go from the right to the left. To right. I mean, I do remember doing that when we were teaching, Alma was teaching a school or somebody, we were making grocery list. I would always go the wrong. So Mother said, now we got to do this right because you have to learn to go from the left to the right. That's reading, that's writing, that's everything. She would put me by those windows and say, now, right from the windows to the piano. And I'd have to go that way. And that was how I learned to go from the left to the right. I had to go do that. I sat in that chair and I would sit there and Mother would remind me again, remember to go from the left to the right. Okay, or from the right. Yeah, I had to go from the left to the right. That was hard for me. But the next one was writing. A left-hander never gets to see their words written. A right-hander gets to figure out what those words are all the time. A left-hander is completely covering up the words as they write them.
They always smear them too.
Oh, that's a whole nother story. That's an art story. Or an ink story. When you're 4th or 5th, 6th grade, get to use ink. Oh my God. It's another story. It goes back. So Mother would say to me, now take the pencil and move your hand way back as you write. Don't write up close. Write so you can see what you're writing all the time. That was a hard one for me to do. Left-handers was not easy. That we've now made adjustments, or people have to. We've gotten rid of the pen and the ink. Now we have ballpoint that probably doesn't smear so bad. Have a lot of different kinds of things. But that was my biggest problem in school, was going that way. Found out I was probably not until years later dyslexic. Numbers and things were just always going the wrong way. Schooling was not really easy for me. Maybe because I was not very bright either, I don't know. But anyway, I spent a lot of time crying. And my problem, I most often cried in art. I liked art, but I could never get the picture like anybody else. Mine were always smeared. They were, I remember trying to do some chalk work. Ever do a left hand?
Yeah.
Nobody tells you that you should be starting your picture from the right side to the left side. Oh no, you get a piece of paper and you go from the left to the right. You do not go from the right to the left.
Huh.
And that's what a left-hander has to do. So my early education was really different, just learning to get through that. But the most nice thing that I loved about school, of course, was those great jungle gym that I couldn't use, and the teeter-totter. And you know, you tried to get so you could stand in the middle of the teeter-totter and go, like Lois says, and go back and forth in the middle. That was a challenge. Hey, I got so I could do that one. Get somebody in and you could, well, those were times, fun times. And one of the best things for the 3rd graders we got to do was watch the boys play baseball. And we were allowed to go out there in a group. We all go out there and watch the boys play baseball. Maybe it was Merced Colony or what, and I watched my 2 brothers out there playing. It was the most exciting thing I could, as a kid, could ever remember. My brothers were out there playing baseball.
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of things. I probably was sick a lot, but those first 3 years were hard. They were hard for me. And I go to the city schools and it was still hard, because now I'm in a room, like we all said, all 4th graders in that one room. 4th grade's a hard transition to begin with. And then to be moved into a 4th grade, into a one room with all the same kids and the same teacher, it was not easy.
What time we got? Where are we on time?
We've been going
on your video.
We're okay.
Huh?
We're okay.
Okay.
Okay. Let's take a little break, okay?
Yeah, let's stop for a few minutes.
Yeah, let's stop.
We started.
Are you ready?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. In Farmdale, we all had, our grades were small. We got to know everyone in that grade or whatever. But we also knew all the children well, because they were the same ones every year. Everyone was, you were the same. But when you look at the children that were in the classroom, they were represented every race coming to California. We had everyone there, and no one ever said any remarks about different races. No one ever said anything to me about the fact that we had Portuguese, Japanese, and a Hispanic, all in our
Okay.
one
We had
grade.
Europeans too, the Czechoslovakians, the Pazins.
We had, we had wonderful groups, that all played together.
Weirs, yes. the
I don't
Weirs.
think anyone ever thought about it, at least I didn't.
No, I didn't.
I never really
No,
thought about it
no,
being any
no,
different.
No.
The room was just filled with all races, and we never thought anything about it. And no one, as far as I ever heard, ever had any name for any
No.
Well, the
groups.
Portuguese always thought they was Portuguese.
They were Portuguese, yes.
That's
they were.
about it.
Yeah.
As far
And
as
the Hispanics we called, well, they all had come from Mexico, I think, from
I
Mexico.
think so.
But we never really had any separation or any thought
no,
that they were different.
no,
It
no.
never ever occurred to us. At
That's
least
right.
when I was there at Farmdale, there was never anything, there was a thought about putting the children in different groups, calling them by different names. I thought that was very good because it led us later in life to be as accepting as we are, maybe from that background.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, what
Okay.
happened then,
Let's hold
You
up
say
just one
something.
second.
just a quick review. You said something about your Japanese. Now, this was the
Oh,
time.
we were gonna
Better
talk.
think a little bit about where
I
you
have a
put
little
those
story
Japanese
about
then.
the Japanese. When we did have two or three families that came to Farmdale, the Harakawas and the Tesaro, the Navarro, several families, Japanese, and we found out that they also went to school on Saturday. And they went to a little place near their farmland, away from Farmdale. We had no idea there was a school, but only the Japanese children went.
Yep.
But they went on Saturday. Well, then when the war broke out, World War II, everyone got suspicious. What had they been learning all that time
Right.
in that school on Saturdays? People got suspicious. Children were going to another school all this time of Japanese descent. Well, I had one good friend, her name was Chico. She was a year younger than me. She wrote a letter after they had been taken. They were taken and put into carloads and taken away. And I never did know what happened to all our Japanese friends from Farmdale. But one day, I got a letter from Chico Harakawa. And she said, Lois, we're at camp so-and-so. And she described it. Why I didn't save the letter, I was not aware at that time how important it would be. She said, we're at this camp, and oh, am I having fun. I'm meeting the cutest boys. And that was her interpretation of being at the terrible camp.
Japanese
That's her
boy.
story.
Was she in California or elsewhere? Was it, do you remember?
What
Whether
did-
she was camped in one of the California camps or was she elsewhere?
I don't remember, Sarah. I don't know. At that time, it wasn't important.
That's right.
I don't remember.
Did we have some that were at a period of time at Los Banos at the fairgrounds or whatever, when you were in high school?
Well, they had the original kind of a internment camp at
Was
the
here.
fairgrounds of Merced.
Fairgrounds.
They went down and built a whole bunch of tar paper shacks down there, a
Yeah,
temporary holding area,
yes.
until they get these big permanent internment centers set up.
In
They
Colorado,
were there
yeah.
for maybe 3 months at the most, something
Yeah.
like that.
That's right.
I remember that. But, you know, to
That's
do that
right.
to those people, when you think back on it now,
I know.
how, see, people who grew up currently in this age now, why in the world could you ever do that to those kind of people? At that time, we all had a different aspect of what this was all about.
Right.
And we were very suspicious of those people. Very much so. And I don't know how it all came about, but we were very, very suspicious. What's
Well,
going
remember
on
we
there?
found out that some of the Japanese had sent signals to a ship that came up close to the shore.
Yes,
And we were so afraid they were going to come and invade California
right.
that we really got scared with the Japanese and thought, well, maybe they would do signals back and forth and report all kinds of things
That's
that
right.
they've learned at the school they've been going to. We got really suspicious.
That's right.
And my opinion not my opinion, but the way I believe, the reason that they were sent was a different reason than I think. I thought that to save their lives, because every place you
Oh.
went,
Oh,
they were ready to kill a Japanese.
yeah.
Could be.
They were so mad at the Japanese for surprising us at Pearl Harbor
Yep,
and
could
the
be.
terrible deaths. That poor little Japanese people here in California, totally innocent, had nothing to do with it. But some people, as we know today, get all worked up and ready to kill them.
That's right.
And it was a good thing that they were taken and put away so that they weren't around the people
The
that
rate
could
of
do this.
population.
I've never thought about it from that aspect. That's a
Neither,
different
Rob.
viewpoint. I've never thought about that. We could have
That's
saved a
it.
lot of lives there. one way
So
or
many,
another.
they started shooting them even before they got out of Livingston. A couple of fellows were shot at Livingston on their farm
Really?
before they even got them on the train and out of here.
No kidding.
So we know that they would have been killed. There
Wow.
were people that were just, because they lost their sons
That's
over
right,
there.
that's right. Something happened at Pearl Harbor to them.
Yeah.
And they were gonna get even.
Might I suggest, Rod, that be deleted? All this social and political conversations are not necessarily what we were talking about, Farmdale School. We got carried away here for a little bit.
Yeah, right.
You know, but it was all very important.
Well, I think it's
But
very
don't-
interesting.
It is very interesting.
But you're right,
It
it's
has
not,
nothing to do with the
Not,
school
not
and
for,
education.
yeah, so.
But it's a
and
very
We gotta get
interesting
rid of that.
concept.
he could- he
I
could-
thought for us, at Farmdale School, ethnicity wasn't important. Didn't matter. Ethnicity
That's-
wasn't a topic or
that's what
something
we
we
need.
thought about. It's the character and the nature of the person, the students that we had. The kids, that guy, I like to play with him because he won't hurt me, for instance, or he'll share things with me, so on. That's the kind of thing that we thought about, no matter who it was. It just, ethnicity was not even a topic of discussion.
but I remember grandma,
Absolutely not.
yeah, you're right. The grandma and mother always thought about the needs of other people, of other families. We didn't have anything, but somebody needed something. That
Oh, yeah.
family needed, like the house that burned, or whatever it
Yeah.
happened to be. Somebody in that area needed something. And I remember at Christmas, we always did all the cooking of candies and things. I will never forget it. That we did a lot, and that was an important thing. Grandma, during the war, she went in and showed the first aid, how to do bandages
Oh,
and
yeah,
things
yeah.
like that. There were, she had the handbook for first aid that the Red Cross had. I mean, they were thinking about the community and what the community needed. And I think that was how we then began to think about, in our classes, hey, we were friends with everybody. Didn't matter who we were, and now who they were, everybody was our friend. And I think it helped to have the adults in the community, however they came, they were always there to help too, no matter who you were.
Well, I wonder if we could just do some kind of a swing towards some other topic now that we've discussed Farmdale School. And we really worked at that, and I think we got a lot of information there that we can share with others. And a lot of things we can talk about with the school, but I wondered if we want to take a little bit of time to talk about the health of ourselves.
Right.
And
Right.
what it was like when we were very young. What were the things that really were very concerned with as children? I just wonder. I think to myself, all of us, we were vaccinated. We talked a little bit about that before. And I can remember
Vaccinations.
when Nurse Rosetta would come to the school and she'd do some vaccinating there. I mean, and that diphtheria, as Bob said, that diphtheria vaccination was a bummer, I'll tell you.
Well, else it scared the hell out
A
of me.
huge big vial of something or other, and a needle that looked as long like
Gotta be a foot
a
long.
knitting needle of some sort. Shab that in your arm,
Boy, I'll
go on
say.
and pump that stuff in there. God, they would cry and carry on. It was awful. And she'd give us vaccination for smallpox.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Smallpox vaccinations.
But we, then as children in our
Yeah.
home, and everybody had communicable diseases, okay, so
Yeah.
what, did we get the mumps?
Yep.
Yes. We got mumps and measles, 2 kinds or 3, and we got
Chicken pox?
chicken pox and
Scarlet fever
Scarlet
was
fever.
Scarlet fever. It seemed to me that for 3 Christmases, we either spent with mumps, scarlet fever, or something, but
Or measles.
or measles. We did.
But we were quarantined also, remember that?
Oh, I forgot. Tell about that,
We
Bob.
could not go to school, we had to stay out, I was out of school for 3 weeks or more, 1 year, because we were quarantined, I think it was scarlet fever or mumps, one or the other.
Scarlet fever, and there was a sign.
I just
Put
heard
out
that,
on
that's
the
right.
door on the house.
There was a sign out on all sides of the house.
Quarantine.
Quarantine.
That's right, quarantine,
Yes.
you could not leave, you stayed right there.
That's right. Nobody come to visit you.
No.
It was during
Didn't
Christmas
even
time.
do that
During
anymore.
Christmas, wasn't it, Lois? I know it was.
It was
It
Christmas
was
time.
Christmas
Scarlet
time.
fever. Yeah,
That's right.
yeah. We did.
What was so sad when we got those illnesses was that it had an impact on the whole family because we were sick, but it was a terrible tragedy for Grandma because she couldn't stay, had to go and
Oh,
leave
that's right. She
Right.
had to
because she's
leave.
teaching in
She
the
was still
city,
teaching in school,
in school, and she couldn't stay with us during that time.
that's right.
I
And
forgot
I know
that.
that was a
Yeah.
hardship for her.
I don't know where she went, but somebody in the church probably she stayed
No,
with.
aunties.
She went to
Auntie, she went to
Auntie's.
stay with Auntie? Okay,
Yes.
Auntie Knucklebob.
yeah, and I remember
Wow.
that she left, yes, we had. I
Wow.
don't know how old I was when I got scarlet fever. I remember you had it first, didn't
Yes.
you, Lois?
Well, Sarah got it first. She'd been very, very sick. Mother was so worried about her. And then we thought that it was all over, and she washed everything. And I was putting things out on the line, and she put blankets and things out in the sun, whatever, or air to air and
Not
so
the
on.
sun, right.
Before I knew it, I was sick with a bad throat, and I came down with the scarlet fever then the next. And then the rest of it, one by one, we just got
I
it.
don't think I had it.
No, you
No,
didn't.
you went off and you were out. I remember that Bob and Grandma were the ones that didn't have to stay home. We were quarantined and they were removed from the
Bob
household.
didn't get it, and
Yeah.
the scarlet fever at that day and age was a real serious problem because they had nothing.
No antibiotics, nothing.
They had nothing to care for,
It's
and
a
we didn't even
Similac.
have
It's a
asthma.
Well, I think it's more of
It
a
was like
strep
different
throat.
name now.
It's a strep throat. It's
now,
called
Bob.
strep throat.
It is just
Oh,
a strep throat.
That's
yeah.
all it was. And
Yeah.
I remember when my children got strep throat and mother, or got a sore throat, and mother would panic. She said, "What are you going to do?" "Mother, we have antibiotics now." But because she saw all of us go through this, and then we also had I remember the scarlet fever, and I don't know when we had the mumps, but it seemed to me that was in the winter also.
That's right, almost the same one after the other.
One after the other, and we spent a lot of time at home. We were out of school, we couldn't go to school, and you couldn't either for
No, I
a certain
couldn't.
length
I
of
just-
time.
Remember you were to chew gum?
Yes,
We'd
Yes.
get the bubble gum. We had to chew gum. Or if we had the
yes,
mumps,
that's
the
right.
mumps you had to chew gum.
I don't remember
You
having,
don't
you
remember?
having
No, no.
whooping cough. I know that Bob and Ray and I had whooping cough.
I don't remember.
I
Raymond had
having
really
cough.
bad. Well, I don't really-
Raymond was the one
Ray
that
was
was so bad.
only a couple of months old, or
Whooping cough.
two, less than 2 anyway. Mother thought he was gonna die. The whooping cough was so bad for Ray.
Yeah,
But I don't remember having.
And they weren't born yet,
No,
so I don't think
we got.
they ever got
no,
it.
Yeah,
no.
and so what was it, okay, with the.
We had the tests, and Sarah and I came up with TB. And we had TB, but we had overcome it. But the TB we figured came from the cow
The
milk
The
that we
milk,
had on.
yeah.
Because we drank raw milk.
Yeah.
That
We
was.
all, you don't have raw milk, of course.
Right.
And when I would go visit somebody else, yes, I'd like a glass of milk. It was cooked.
Pasteurized,
It's
yes.
pasteurized, and I didn't
never did
know.
like milk when I was a kid.
I didn't
hated
like pasteurized, it was awful.
it. I couldn't, any
And
kind
it
of
was
milk I
such a
did not
strong
like.
difference to me.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed such a big difference.
I don't notice the
I
difference.
loved
now.
raw milk, it was good.
See, Uncle Bob had both kinds. We could order raw
Oh.
milk or we could order pasteurized milk.
That's true.
He didn't
He
have,
never
he didn't have
pasteurized.
I don't know because
He
I
didn't.
remember that it was
No.
always, we had a choice. Later
No.
on, maybe later on.
No, we never had it.
I knew
no.
we didn't ever have a pasteurized
Never
milk.
had.
We got raw or
That's
pasteurized
all-
milk
that's all
from
you
him.
got from Uncle Bob.
And you deliver, yeah.
We
They
delivered
delivered it all the time.
Yeah, Bob.
Raymond and I.
Anyway, the health at that time was difficult because we had no kinds of medication that could really help. The people used all kinds of things they thought would be helpful. And do you want me to tell
Sure.
the story? My our grandmother, used the techniques that she learned out in a hut in Iowa. And that was to get a
Flannel.
a can of powdered mustard. And she would get a cloth,
Oh, yeah, mustard plaster.
and she would then put the powdered mustard on the cloth, and then put it on your chest,
Right.
and then dampen it. And with warm water, get warm water, dampen it. And pretty soon that mustard would begin to really steam. It would get hot from the wet, and the cloth would protect you from the mustard. The mustard was outside and the cloth underneath. Well, I remember I was about 5 or 6, and I was just coughing and wheezing and having a terrible time. And so Grandma fixed the mustard plaster, as she usually did for us. This time she forgot me. Lois still has the mustard plaster on her. She came running in. I was lying in bed waiting for somebody because it was burning. So she grabbed the cloth and part of my skin went with it. It had been on way too long. But that was the technique that she used for, I know, for Bob and Ray.
Well, I had mustard
Was
plasters.
a
We all
hot
did.
plaster.
Yeah, we all did. There was nothing else. If you
Nothing.
had an asprin, that was about all
The
you're
aspirin
gonna get.
wasn't even
But I
around.
was gonna say, there is nothing there.
No, and the mustard plaster
That's it.
was for coughing and wheezing.
Chest
and-
colds, pneumonias, or
Pneumonia,
whatever. Yeah,
pre-pneumonia.
that's right.
We never got pneumonia,
But we
so I
did.
guess
None
the
of us
mustard
did.
plaster
We never
worked.
had pneumonia when we were kids.
We never did.
No, I remember.
So I figured that mustard plaster must have worked.
Well,
That was one of the techniques.
We always had to have honey too. Always had to drink some honey.
Okay.
Always, Daddy would sneak something in with his, give me some honey and whiskey or whatever, just a quick one. As a kid, I remember in that bedroom out on the ranch,
Oh.
I had to drink honey and some, maybe it was lemon juice or whatever, something. And because my cold was always so bad, that the honey and the lemon or whatever it would be, would make me feel better, would help me.
Well,
And-
the other thing you talked about later, about when you had a cough, what did you do with,
Oh,
with the steam?
you know, steam tents, and I don't know if anybody has them now, obviously I don't have other machines that will do it. But because we lived in an area that's really pretty dry, but I always had the croup. I mean, I was known for croups and colds and lived my early life very sick with that kind of stuff. But my mother, doesn't matter day or night, I would have, if I got that croup and I'd be coughing and coughing, she'd get me up and she'd have a big pot, boiling water, and then she would get the newspaper, if we had one, some kind of paper, and put around that, and I'd stick my head in that steam, and I would suck in that steam, and it would clear up my croup. We would do that about every 3 or 4 hours, and my mother would have to get up and do that for me. She did it religiously, just get rid of that. I'm keeping everybody awake, obviously, because I'm crouping, I'm coughing, and I'm very sick. But that was the thing that we had, steam tents. You had a pot of boiling water that was steaming away, and you get your head in there nice and close, and she always asked me, was it too hot, or what, you know, there was something about temperature, but we had to have enough steam that I breathed it in, and she'd tell me, breathe, breathe. I'm always standing on a stool over the hot pot. I'm not standing over on a stool, so I could get up there and breathe that stuff. And that was what I, with the mustard plasters and that. And there was nothing, no penicillin until I got really sick in the 8th grade. There was sulfa. There was sulfa by the time I was in the 6th grade.
That's right.
I was having sulfa. And there was sulfa available a little bit earlier. And that came from World War II and some of that we got some antibiotics, and sulfa came in with that time. And after sulfa,
That's
then
right.
we got penicillin. And that was the biggest thing. And I remember
Very
my
good.
first penicillin sitting there on 27th Street, very, very sick with what we at that time called scarlet fever, but it was really just strep throat, and giving me penicillin to try to get rid of it. I had spent earlier in the 6th grade in the hospital for
Yes.
6 days because young Tom was born and only less than 6 months old. and they were living with us, and they were afraid I had diphtheria. So they had to do all the blood tests, and they put me in isolation at the hospital out of General. And then this place that I could see no one, mother would come and stand on there, and I would have to stand out to the window and talk to my mother and cry because I could not see her, I couldn't touch her any, and there was a wire there, so I couldn't get through to see mother.
No.
It was an awful thing, but Tom was so little, and they were afraid if I had diphtheria, it would give it to Lois. Well, anyway, I did. They had to then take the blood test and send it to Sacramento, and they said it will take 5 days to get the results. If you can imagine. 5 days I'm in isolation, and I saw no one. The food was terrible. It was awful. Auntie sent me beautiful red apples one time, and they were gone for crappy little ones. And I knew what happened to those beautiful red apples. I never got to eat them. I got crappy little ones. Somebody swapped them out on me. But anyway, I finally got out, and we found out I did not have diphtheria. And Tom would have been safe because Lois was nursing him. And he would not have gotten it probably anyway. So those are the kinds of things. But then it was in the 8th grade when I was so sick with strep throat, and they had penicillin, and that was then on something that I had. And I wasn't terribly sick after those years. Very sick
I
after
didn't,
that.
I didn't realize that, I thought we were out on mission when you wound up in that isolation.
No.
I was in the
didn't
6th
realize
grade.
you were on 27th
Yeah.
Street,
Very-
but I had that, I didn't realize.
Yeah.
I thought several things, you know, we had one of the best doctors, really, in
Oh,
the
yeah,
time,
Dr. Bud.
Dr. Mudd.
Oh, that was the
That man would drive out to the house
Yes.
just to check the kids.
Yes.
He'd come out and say, Gladys, let's see how the kids are.
Yep.
And we'd all 5 of us, he'd check us out to see if we're
And I
okay.
think he delivered all 5 of us.
May have, I think
I
so.
think he did. Yeah.
And that hospital, Mercy Hospital, that was his. He started that.
Oh,
Oh,
on,
Dr.
really?
Mudd,
on 28 on Bear
27th
Creek?
Street,
Yeah.
27th AM. Dr.
You guys are
Mudd.
all lucky you got born in a
Bob.
hospital, I didn't.
No,
I got born at home.
Well, that's
We
the
were
thing.
too poor to go to the hospital, couldn't do anything
I
else.
guess that's right, Bob.
That was
assume
it.
That was what it was, yeah.
that-
Yes.
Yeah.
And when Sarah, they're expecting Sarah, they bought a bunch of baby turkey chicks and put them out in the field with some turkeys to raise, to kill, to pay the hospital bill for Sarah.
Oh, really, Lois?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
That's right.
Yeah. And probably what the hospital bill is $100 or 50 or.
Mother raised $50.
Yeah.
It
$50.
was $50 in money.
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
They killed enough turkeys to get $50.
Well, I'm only
Paid
because
for
of
Sarah's
turkeys
bill.
am I out of the hospital. Oh, well, you know, that's a whole, when
What?
we're talking about those kind of things, Dr. Mudd would come, and I have a horrible story about Dr. Mudd.
Yeah.
Everybody loved that man, and you guys can remember because I was only about 2 years old, and I had an ear infection, and it was so bad, and so Dr. Mudd, the middle of the night, early evening or middle, came and was gonna look at my ears. Eventually, it was so bad, I was not gonna let him do it, and I'm screaming and hollering. The earaches were terrible, and I knew with this big machine, he was gonna look at my ears and make it worse, you know, whatever it was. I wasn't gonna let. Finally, Mother and Dr. Mudd said, just go get a sheet, we're gonna wrap her up, and we're gonna look at those ears. And that's what they did. That's what I was little, but I do remember sitting in that mohair big chair and Mother holding me and Dr. Mudd trying to get me under control. And the screen, and I think you all were observing this terrible demonstration that went on. But I remember that really carefully. But that man came out and looked at my ears and did what he needed to do. Whatever you would do at that time in history, I have no idea what happened to me. Whether they had drops that they put in my ear, some oil or something, I do not know. Now, whether
Amazing
they
when he did
lanced
that.
my ear, I'm not sure about that either, but that may have happened.
When he said to Gladys, get a sheet.
That's
I remember seeing that, and Sarah sitting over there and carrying on. Dr. Mudd said, Gladys, get a sheet. And she got a sheet, and it wasn't a matter of minutes. He had Sarah wrapped up in that thing, she couldn't move. She couldn't move.
Right.
That guy was something else. He used to drive an old Chevrolet. Old Chevrolet, it was yellow Chevrolet. I can always remember him. Here comes Dr. Mudd. Great guy, great man.
probably the one that took care of my arm.
Oh, I'm
Oh,
sure.
I'm sure.
Remember that?
Yes.
I don't remember, I don't know where we were when that happened. When I put my hand up in the ringer, remember?
Yes,
Ran through the washing machine.
Yeah.
yes.
Got the old fashioned